I never expected the end to arrive in the middle of something so ordinary. We were sitting in the living room, the television on low, half-finished mugs of coffee on the table. Her brother had come over, sprawled across the couch like he owned it. He'd been staying more and more often, turning our house into his weekend refuge. I had learned to hold my tongue, but the tension was already sitting in the walls like damp. It started with something trivial. He joked about how useless I was with money, how at least his sister knows how to manage things. I glanced at her, expecting her to brush it off, but she didn't. She leaned back, arms folded, and said flatly, "Maybe he's right. You don't bring much to this house. You're replaceable." The word sat there, heavy and cutting. Replaceable. Said as if I were a piece of furniture, an old chair she'd grown tired of. I felt my jaw lock, but I didn't answer. Her brother smirked, enjoying the silence. He had never hidden his disdain, but now he had her agreement, spoken out loud in front of me. That was the difference. The balance of our lives, all the invisible scaffolding I had held up, the bills paid on time, the mortgage kept afloat, the quiet work of keeping her career stress from spilling over. None of it mattered in that moment. In their eyes, I was background noise, someone easy to discard. She didn't stop there. She picked up the pile of envelopes I'd set aside earlier, the electricity bill on top, and dropped them onto the table. "You obsess over this stuff, but honestly, we'd be fine without you. You act like everything depends on you. It doesn't." I looked at the bills spread across the table. My handwriting on the checks, my reminders scrawled in the margins, evidence of the hours I spent balancing what little we had against what was always demanded. To her, it was clutter. To me, it was the quiet proof of care. Her brother shifted in his seat, casual, like the verdict had been delivered and he was the beneficiary. "You'll figure it out, man," he said, grinning. "Or not. Either way, she's got me." I heard her laugh. Not cruel, but dismissive. That was worse. Not rage, not passion, just indifference. As if my presence or absence would change nothing. Something closed in me then. A door, maybe? I didn't argue. I didn't plead. I only stood, the room suddenly too small, too stale. My eyes caught on the ring of condensation from my mug staining the wood. Another ordinary mark, already fading, already forgotten. I gathered my jacket from the chair and reached for the small ring of keys on the hook. The house key slipped off into my palm with a soft metallic sound. I held it for a moment, its weight familiar, and then slipped it into my pocket. She didn't ask where I was going. Neither of them did. That silence was the final confirmation. I was already erased from their picture. I stepped out into the night without a word. The door closed behind me, the lock clicking into place with a sound sharper than anything they had said. And that was it. No fight, no scene. Just the simple, humiliating truth. In their eyes, I was replaceable. The first night, I checked into a budget motel on the edge of town. The kind with buzzing neon that stains the curtains red, a vending machine in the lobby with half the buttons broken. The sheets smelled faintly of bleach, and the air conditioner rattled when it kicked in. Still, it was mine. 4 walls where no one could tell me I was unnecessary. At first, the silence was unbearable. I lay on the narrow bed, listening to the highway outside, the occasional burst of tires over uneven asphalt. My phone buzzed twice. One text from a colleague about a meeting, another automated alert about a transfer I had set up earlier. Nothing from her. Nothing asking where I was, if I was safe. She hadn't noticed or didn't care. I woke before dawn the next morning and walked to the corner cafe. Black coffee, burnt toast. I sat by the window and watched people rushing to work, couples still speaking to each other, children pulling at their parents' hands. The ordinariness of it cut deeper than anything she had said. By the third day, the motel room stopped feeling like exile and started to feel like distance, a buffer. The silence became sharper, more focused. Without her chatter, without her brother's voice filling the house, I could hear my own thoughts again. I realized, slowly, that all the routines of our life had been mine to maintain. Rent payments, utility bills, the weekly grocery run. I kept mental track of expiration dates, insurance renewals, balances creeping toward overdraft. I remembered her shrugging whenever I asked her to look at a statement. "That's your thing," she'd say. I had believed her indifference was trust. Now I saw it for what it was. Dependence dressed up as disregard. I started writing things down, almost automatically. On a pad of motel stationery, I listed the accounts in my name, the recurring payments linked to my card, the standing orders that kept her life smooth, car insurance, health plan, even the streaming subscription she fell asleep to. One by one, I circled what I could sever. There was bitterness, yes, but underneath it, something steadier was taking root. Clarity. The structure of our life hadn't been built by both of us. It had been mine alone. She had mistaken silence for absence and reliability for weakness. Evenings were the hardest. I'd catch myself reaching for the second mug, the second plate, only to remember I was alone. I would leave the lamp on by the window just so the room didn't look like a cell. Loneliness pressed close, but alongside it came relief. No one mocking me, no one brushing me aside, just emptiness. And emptiness, I found, is easier to bear than contempt. Occasionally, I drove past the house. Once I saw her car in the driveway, his parked right behind it. The curtains were open. She was at the table, phone in hand, laughing. For a moment, the image stung, the ease with which I had been replaced. Then I noticed the stack of envelopes piled on the counter, the bills I had always cleared away before they grew teeth. She had left them unopened. I didn't knock. I didn't call. I drove on. That night in the motel, I stared at the ceiling and let the realization settle fully. She hadn't discarded me because I was useless. She had discarded me because I had made everything seem too easy. Like a stagehand working in the dark, my work invisible until I stepped away and the set collapsed. The loneliness didn't vanish, but it became bearable once I understood it was temporary. Withdrawal was not defeat. It was space. Space for truth to surface on its own. I folded the pad of notes, slipped it into my jacket pocket, and set the alarm for early morning. Tomorrow I would call the bank. Quietly, methodically, without anger. For now, retreat was my weapon, and silence, the kind that stretched across days, not hours, was sharper than any words I could have spoken. It began in small, invisible steps, not dramatic, not vindictive, just deliberate. The morning after I wrote out the list of accounts, I walked into the branch office of my bank. The teller smiled, asked about my day. I answered with a steady voice, though my palms felt damp against the counter. Within 20 minutes, I had redirected the bulk of my savings into a separate account under my name only. The joint account, once the reservoir for both of us, was left shallow, enough to look normal for a few weeks, but not enough to sustain her old rhythm. I canceled the automatic payment for her car insurance. Quietly, efficiently. A single phone call. The representative didn't ask why, just confirmed the change and sent me an email. I archived it under a folder labeled Separation, the digital trail of my withdrawal neatly ordered, the streaming subscriptions, the gym membership she never used but insisted on keeping, the delivery service she leaned on 3 nights a week, all tied to my card. I let each renewal lapse. No angry note, no confrontation. Just a slow unraveling of the net she hadn't even realized was beneath her. In the motel room, I spread the printed statements across the bed, each one a map of her comfort. I drew lines, circled names, crossed out payments. It wasn't revenge, it was reclamation. Every charge erased was a piece of myself retrieved. I didn't block her number. She didn't call. That silence confirmed what I already knew. She thought I'd come back. She believed I was too bound, too loyal, too weak to stay gone. Her brother's smirk had said as much the night I left. She's got me. They assumed my absence was temporary. So I watched from a distance. A friend sent me a screenshot from social media. A picture of her and her brother at dinner, wine glasses raised. The caption, "Family first, always." Beneath it, comments about how strong their bond was. I scrolled through them with a cold detachment. No one saw the bills stacked on her counter, the rent notice that would arrive in 2 weeks, the insurance cancellation letters already on their way. Another mutual acquaintance mentioned running into her at the grocery store. She looked stressed, they said casually, kept checking her phone. I nodded, said nothing. Inside, a quiet acknowledgement. The cracks were showing. Still, patience. I refused to rush. The temptation to call, to press the point, to reveal my hand, it came and went. But strategy required silence. Let them believe they had won. Let them underestimate the weight of what I carried away when I closed that door. Nights in the motel became ritualistic. I made instant noodles, scribbled updates in the margin of my notepad. Dates, small observations, insurance canceled, subscription expired, rent due soon. I logged them like an accountant balancing a different kind of ledger, not of money, but of patience. I imagined them at the house, the lights flickering when the utility company sent a warning, her brother sighing when deliveries stopped arriving at the door, her car parked idle when the insurance lapsed and she couldn't risk driving it. None of this happened all at once. It happened slowly, the way neglect creeps in, unnoticed until it chokes. Occasionally, I drove past again. The grass in the yard grew uneven, untended. A small detail, but telling. She had always criticized me for leaving it too long. Now, no one bothered. The porch light stayed off some nights. Once, I saw him leaving in the early morning, shoulders hunched as if the weight of the house itself pressed down. I didn't honk. I didn't roll down the window. I just drove on. Every so often, I caught myself rehearsing what I would say if she called, if she begged. But no call came. Pride is a powerful drug. So is arrogance. They believed I would fold first. They believed dependence only flowed one way. What they didn't see, what I now understood, was that dependence had always been theirs. My lawyer confirmed it when I finally scheduled a consultation. She listened quietly as I explained the accounts, the house, the bills. When I finished, she said, "You've done half my work already. You know where your leverage is." Leverage. That was the word I had been circling without naming. It wasn't love anymore. It wasn't even betrayal. It was leverage, the quiet force of being indispensable, revealed only through absence. I left the office with a folder of documents and a strange calm. Strategy wasn't fire, it was ice, slow, creeping, inescapable, Back at the motel, I set the folder on the desk, beside the notepad filled with my observations. Outside, the neon sign buzzed again, bleeding red light into the room. I lay back on the bed, hands behind my head, and let the silence stretch. They thought silence meant defeat. They would learn it meant preparation. It didn't take long. Absence has a way of leaving fingerprints, even if it says nothing at all. The first signs came in the form of whispers. A colleague of hers, someone I still had polite contact with, mentioned she'd been late to work twice in 1 week. She had always prided herself on punctuality, on being the one others relied on. Now, apparently, she arrived flustered, snapping at her team. I nodded, filed it away, and said nothing. 2 weeks later, I received a formal notice from the utility company in the mail, not addressed to me anymore, but forwarded anyway. Final warning, stamped in red across the envelope. I held it for a moment, considering, then I slipped it into my folder, an artifact of absence. I knew she'd find her lights dimming soon enough. The cracks widened slowly, then all at once. One evening, driving past the house, I saw his car gone, hers parked awkwardly on the curb. The porch light, usually on, was dark. Through the window, I caught a glimpse of her sitting at the table, head in her hands, the same pile of bills I had once kept orderly, now scattered like fallen leaves. I didn't linger, didn't gloat, just watched long enough to confirm what I already knew. The scaffolding was giving way. Friends began to notice. A mutual acquaintance mentioned she'd been asking to borrow small amounts, just until payday. That was her brother's line, always. She had once scolded him for it. Now she was using it herself. Meanwhile, her brother's confidence faltered. I heard through another friend that he had moved back to his own apartment after a heated argument. Something about money, about him not pulling his weight. It didn't surprise me. Dependence tolerates arrogance only until the bills arrive. Then arrogance turns into blame. The replacement alliance, the one that had made me replaceable, was already fraying. One evening, I sat in the motel, scrolling idly through social media. Her brother had posted a photo from a bar, captioned, "Free again." He looked pale, drawn, the grin forced. No trace of the swagger he had carried in my living room that night. I closed the app, poured myself a cup of bitter instant coffee, and let the silence answer for me. Then came the phone call. Not from her, from the landlord. My number was still listed as a secondary contact. He asked if I was aware that rent was overdue. I said only, "I don't live there anymore," and gave him her new number. His sigh told me this wasn't the first delay. By the third month, the unraveling was complete enough to be visible to everyone. At work, she wore the same jacket 3 days in a row. Someone remarked she seemed tired, distracted. She had stopped posting cheerful photos, stopped broadcasting the curated version of life she'd once thrived on. Silence had spread into her as well, but the moment that crystallized everything came unexpectedly. I stopped at the grocery store one evening, the same one I used to do our weekly runs in. I saw her there in the checkout line. She was fumbling with a card that kept being declined. The cashier's face was neutral, but the people behind her shifted impatiently. She tried another card, then another. I watched from a distance, anonymous in the next aisle, as she finally counted out small bills and coins from her wallet, cheeks burning. That was the image I carried back to the motel. Not out of glee, but out of confirmation. Reality had done the work. I hadn't needed to lift a finger beyond stepping away. Her brother was gone. The bills piled high. The house, once so sure of itself, now dimmed at night, curtains closed tight. She was alone with the weight of everything she once dismissed as your thing. The collapse was not a single event. It was a slow, grinding erosion. The water shut off for a day. The internet connection lapsed. The car sat unused, uninsured. She borrowed, begged quietly, avoided eye contact with neighbors. And still, no call to me. Pride held its line, even as the ground beneath her gave way. I didn't chase it. I didn't need to. The collapse wasn't about me anymore. It was about truth, standing bare in her kitchen, in her mailbox, in the look on her face as she fumbled for coins at the checkout. In the motel, I opened my folder again. The neatly stacked notices, the printed screenshots, the handwritten notes, each page a record not of vengeance, but of patience. Patience had teeth sharper than anger. I leaned back, listening to the hum of the neon outside. The room was still bleak, but it no longer felt temporary. It felt chosen. A waiting room, not a prison. Collapse had come, exactly as it was meant to. And when she finally turned to me, and she would, it would not be out of love or loyalty or even regret. It would be out of necessity. And that, I thought, was the truest reversal. The one no word of mine could have engineered, only time. It was late on a Wednesday when the silence finally broke. I was sitting in the motel room, flipping through my notepad of dates and notes, when the phone lit up. Her name on the screen. For a moment, I let it buzz, just watching the glow. Then I answered, voice steady. She didn't waste time with greetings. "I need to see you," she said. Her voice was frayed, thinner than I remembered. I told her a cafe near the old bus station. Neutral ground. Not our home, not her territory. She arrived 15 minutes late, wearing a coat that hung off her shoulders. Her hair was unkempt, her face pale. She carried herself with the brittle dignity of someone trying to hold together pieces that refused to fit. We sat opposite each other. The table between us was scratched, the air thick with the smell of stale coffee. She stirred sugar into her cup without tasting it. Her hands trembled slightly. Finally, she spoke. "I can't keep up. The rent, the bills, everything, it's too much." I said nothing, just watched her. Her eyes flicked up, searching my face for softness, for recognition of the woman I used to love. "You've made your point," she said. "Fine. You were right. I need your help." The words hung there, fragile, but I didn't rush to fill the silence. She leaned forward. "It's not just me. He's gone. My brother. He left after we fought about money. Said I was dragging him down. She stopped, pressed her lips together. "He doesn't pick up my calls." I took a sip of coffee, let the bitterness sit on my tongue. Then I asked quietly, "Replaceable, wasn't I?" Her face flinched, as if the word itself cut. She looked down at her hands. "I didn't mean it." I was angry. I was comfortable, I interrupted. Too comfortable to notice who held everything up. Her silence was answer enough. The cafe was nearly empty. A man in the corner typed on a laptop. A waitress refilled cups without glancing at us. The ordinariness of it all made the moment heavier. She tried again. "We can fix this. We can start over. Just come back. I'll do better this time." I let the offer settle between us. Start over. As if betrayal could be erased with a promise. As if the scaffolding I had built could be quietly rebuilt, with me slipping back into place like nothing had cracked. "Why now?" I asked. Her voice cracked. "Because I can't do it alone." I thought. She stopped. "I thought you needed me more than I needed you." I was wrong. There it was, plain, stripped of pride. Not apology exactly, admission. I studied her face. The arrogance was gone, replaced by exhaustion. She looked smaller, diminished. Not the woman who had laughed with her brother in my living room while I stood silent with bills in my hand. I could have lashed out, could have told her she deserved every sleepless night, every unpaid notice. But vengeance felt unnecessary. Reality had already done the speaking. Instead, I asked, "What do you want from me, exactly?" She looked startled by the bluntness. Then she whispered, "I want you back. I want the stability. I want—" She trailed off. "I want us." The honesty was unvarnished, but it was also transactional. She wanted stability. Us was an afterthought. I leaned back, let her words hang in the air. "You don't want me. You want what I carried. The work, the weight." Her eyes filled, but she didn't deny it. The confrontation wasn't loud. No shouting, no slammed fists, just the slow collapse of pride in the face of truth. She had walked in believing she could persuade me with need. Instead, she sat across from me, stripped bare, every defense burned away. After a long silence, I said, "You treated me as if I were replaceable. Now you know the truth. You were the one replaceable to your brother, and without me, the scaffolding fell. That was never about love. That was about dependence." She whispered, "So what now?" I considered the question. Outside, the buses groaned and hissed at the station, people boarding and disembarking, carrying their lives in bags and briefcases. Choices everywhere. "You came here asking for help," I said finally. "I don't owe it, not anymore, but I'll decide how much I give back, on my terms." Her lips parted as if to protest, but she closed them again. She knew she had no leverage left. The waitress dropped the check on the table. I paid it without looking at her. Small, deliberate, a reminder of who still held the balance. When we stood to leave, she touched my sleeve lightly. "Please." The word was small, almost inaudible. I pulled back gently. "I'll let you know." Her eyes followed me as I walked out, but she didn't follow. She couldn't. The night air outside was cold, sharp in my lungs. For the first time in months, I didn't feel the motel walls pressing in on me. I felt space, wide, open, mine. The confrontation had not been fire, not rage. It had been truth, delivered quietly across a scratched table, and truth, finally, was heavier than any revenge. She didn't call again right away. Pride dies hard, even after collapse. But within a week, another message appeared on my phone. "Can we talk again? Please." This time, I didn't rush to answer. I let it sit overnight. In the morning, I wrote back one word. "Tomorrow." We met at a different cafe, farther from the house, a place neither of us had used before. She arrived early, waiting by the window with 2 cups already on the table. That alone told me how far the balance had shifted. She was the one waiting now. Her voice was softer, stripped of the edge that once dismissed me. "I've thought about what you said," she began. "You were right. I didn't see what you carried. I didn't respect it. I see it now." I stirred my coffee slowly. Let her keep speaking. "I can't do this without you. I don't want to. I was foolish. I thought I was stronger than I am, but everything fell apart the second you left." Her hands trembled as she clasped them together. "I miss you." There was a time those words would have undone me. Not now. Now I heard them for what they were, an admission of need, not of love. Still, they carried a weight I'd been waiting to hear, not to soothe, but to confirm. I leaned forward. "If I come back, it won't be the same. I won't slip quietly into the role you dismissed. Those days are gone." She nodded quickly, almost desperately. "I understand. Just tell me what it would take." The reversal was complete. She was asking for terms. I was the one with power. I spoke slowly, each word deliberate. "Respect first, always. If you want me in your life again, you don't diminish me in front of anyone. Not your brother, not your friends, not yourself. You don't get to erase what I bring." Her eyes filled, but she nodded again. "Yes, I can do that." "Second," I continued, "you take responsibility. You don't hand off every burden. You learn to manage bills, accounts, the house. I won't be your safety net while you laugh at me from the couch. We share it, or it doesn't happen." This time, she hesitated. The hesitation was honest. The weight of responsibility frightened her, but eventually she said, "Yes, I'll learn." "Third," I said, my voice cold but steady, "you don't get to pretend the betrayal didn't happen. You don't erase it with apologies. You live with it. You let it remind you what it cost." Her chin lowered, shame written plainly. "I know. The shift was not about cruelty. It was about balance restored. The woman who once told me I was replaceable now sat across from me, repeating yes to each condition I laid down. Not out of fear, but out of recognition that the truth had stripped her of illusions." We sat in silence for a while after that. The cafe bustled around us, the hum of conversations and clatter of dishes. For the first time, I felt no strain in silence. It wasn't loaded anymore. It was mine. Finally, she asked, "So, will you come back?" I thought about the house, about the nights in the motel, about the neon sign bleeding red into the curtains. I thought about the bills scattered across her table, the look on her face when her card was declined, and I thought about the night she had called me replaceable. "I'll come back," I said slowly, "but not as before. If you want me, you accept the terms. No negotiation." Relief washed over her face so quickly it almost hurt to watch, but behind it was something else too. Fear. Fear of losing me again, fear of failing the conditions. That fear was new, and it was necessary. We left together, but not hand in hand. I walked a step ahead, not behind. She noticed. I let her. At the car, she asked if I wanted to drive. I shook my head. "Your turn." A small thing, but deliberate. She fumbled with the keys, started the engine. The shift was already in motion. As we drove back toward the house, the silence between us felt different. Not suffocating, not empty. Weighted, yes, but balanced now. For the first time, she wasn't sure of me, and that uncertainty was the ground on which respect could grow. The betrayal had scarred us both. That couldn't be erased. But from where I sat, watching her grip the wheel tightly, I knew the axis had turned. The one once discarded, the one once mocked, was now the one setting terms. And that was enough. The house looked smaller when I stepped back inside. Not physically. The walls hadn't shifted. But the air was different. The silence clung heavier, every corner echoing with what had been said and unsaid. She followed me through the door like someone afraid I might vanish if she let go of sight. The kitchen was as I had last seen it. Counters cluttered, envelopes stacked. She hovered, waiting for me to notice, waiting for judgment. I didn't give her any. I simply placed my jacket on the chair as if it were any other night, and let her sit with the discomfort. That first evening was quiet. Too quiet. She tried small talk, the weather, the office, the neighbor's new dog, but her words fell into the air without catching. I answered when necessary, but I didn't fill the spaces. For once, she was the one scrambling to cover silence. The next morning, I sat at the table with the stack of bills. She watched, tense. "I'll take half," she said quickly. "Show me how." "I mean it this time." I slid one envelope toward her. "Start here." She fumbled, but she didn't retreat. That, at least, was new. For weeks we lived like that, cautious, measured, almost clinical. She tried, and I saw the strain. She set reminders for due dates, learned how to log into accounts, stayed up late balancing figures she once mocked me for keeping. She burned meals more than she cooked them, but she didn't give up. I didn't praise her. I didn't mock her either. I let the weight settle on her shoulders, exactly where it had always belonged. Her brother didn't return. His absence was an unspoken relief. The space he left made room for something else. Not warmth, not yet, but the possibility of respect. And yet, something in me remained unchanged. Even as she tried, even as she bent herself toward humility, I couldn't forget the word. Replaceable, said in front of him, said without hesitation. One night, weeks later, she asked the question outright. "Do you forgive me?" I looked at her across the table, the lamplight harsh on her tired face. "No," I said. The truth landed between us, solid. "But I'll live with you." "That's different." Tears filled her eyes, but she didn't argue. She understood. Forgiveness was not mine to give, not yet, maybe not ever. The aftermath wasn't redemption. It wasn't a cinematic reunion. It was something colder, quieter, balance. She no longer carried the illusion of superiority. She no longer laughed at what she didn't understand. She knew every day that stability was not free, that I wasn't an accessory to her life. I was the axis. That knowledge was its own form of justice. Sometimes, when I left the house in the morning, I'd hear her voice behind me, softer than it had ever been. "Be careful. Come back." Not out of habit, but out of fear. Fear of what absence would mean if it happened again. I never promised I would. I just nodded, closed the door, and let the sound of the lock echo. The real revenge had never been revenge at all. It was patience. It was absence. It was letting time prove what words could not. I was never replaceable. And now she knew it too.